We all know what happened in 2020. And for me, I had left my job, my career, a huge part of my identity. And I thought that my dream of becoming a digital nomad and traveling the world was over. I literally had weeks of that reality. I was like, I missed the boat. I can't do this anymore. I didn't know what's going to happen, obviously. But now looking back at it, it was where the Yuri who you're talking to right now really started. There was a lot that happened in 2020, and it really became the foundation of who I am now.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome, fellow navigators. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to invite you all to get your passport to connection. What is that? Well, we talk a lot about connection here on the podcast, how to connect with yourself as well as make meaningful connections with others. But I know it's not as simple as going to a meetup event and making instant best friends. At least not always. And there's work that you need to understand yourself and what you're looking for in friendships, where to meet them if you're traveling or moving to a new city, how to handle rejection and filter for like-minded friendships, and how to maintain these friendships over time and distance. So if you've ever felt the pangs of loneliness, and well, who hasn't, and wish you could just figure out all these secrets to these questions, then Passport to Connection may just be for you. So this is a one-day live virtual workshop and monthly mastermind where I'm going to empower you with all of the knowledge and actionable steps and direction so you can make yourself more magnetic, reignite your spirit of play, and in turn, identify and attract all those beautiful soul-aligned friendships that you're looking for. And this isn't just a workshop. This is a community in itself. So head over to travelnottoescape.com/friends to get more information and sign up. And hurry, this is going to be an intimate workshop, so make sure to save your spot today. And with that, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to today's Travel Not to Escape episode, and we have our guest for today, Yuri Chu Su, online business manager and digital nomad, on with us today. And we're going to get to know her story of transformation through travel in today's episode. Thank you so much for coming on for today's show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Share with the audience where you're currently joining us from.
I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Ooh, I love it. One of my ultimate favorite cities. And we actually got introduced through a friend. So friends are friends.
Yes.
And that's actually one of my favorite things about Buenos Aires. We were talking before we started recording is that it's so easy to meet amazing connections there.
Yeah, I can 100% attest to that. It's one of the easiest places to meet people, to meet really cool people. There's so many people traveling through all these groups, all these events, all these WhatsApp groups. It's a very lively city to be in.
And I actually don't know. Do you speak Spanish at all?
I do, yeah. So I was born in
nice.
Peru, so it's actually my mother tongue. I'm not 100% fluent in it because I moved away when I was young, but I do have a good base and it's very useful being here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, Argentina, Spanish, Argentine Spanish. That's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing on its own for sure.
Yes. Okay. So before we dive into your story, I want to ask you a question I ask everyone. I love to start the podcast with a question on play. And so think back to your early days and let me know what your favorite childhood activity was.
That's such a great question, and I've never even had this thought before. But what comes to mind is that I didn't have much play, to be honest, when I was younger. I devoted a lot of my childhood to table tennis. So in a
Oh.
way, that was playful, but I did it from an angle of competition and training and very Chinese kind of mindset. So in some ways it was playful because I was literally playing a sport, but it might not have been your typical kind of play as a child.
Yeah. And were there times, and I totally get this too, growing up in an Asian household, there's
Yeah.
the things that you have to do. And then the things that, even in those moments, though, even in the childhood where, it may not have had a lot of those like typical or stereotypical play moments, there might have been some things when you were going through school that you were naturally drawn to. Like, I remember myself, if I think back to like kindergarten, I was like, oh, I actually really loved finger painting. Memories of like rolling down grassy hills or anything that comes to mind from when you were a child that were just like, oh, that was a fun moment.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. One is being playing with my brothers. I have two older brothers, and I would just play games with them. Like I remember we had this little a set of jazz, I think it was called, with a ball and the thing that you throw up and you just catch it, and just super basic
Ooh.
little things like that. But I would play with them. I also remember looking for bugs in
Oh, okay.
school. Literally, it was so random and kind of gross. But I remember before table tennis, after school, I would, with my friends, just look for these kind of unique
Was
bugs
it
that
the
we would
roly
have.
polies?
I don't know what they were, but I remember vividly looking into like dirt for bugs, which sounds so gross, but it was, I guess, this curiosity that I've always had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And okay, so I asked this question because so Dr. Stuart Brown is a play researcher, and he's just done like thousands of research into people and their play styles, or the types of ways that they played as a child and as adults. And he started to see some trends. And through his research, he actually identified 8 categories or 8 different play personalities. And these are, the different ways that you play. So from what I'm gathering from a couple of the moments that you shared, the the looking for the bugs kind of strikes as a explorer play style, because you didn't mention that you were collecting the bugs, but you were looking for them, whereas actually I had another guest who was collecting them, so that would be
Mm,
a collector play style. So because you were
mm,
looking for them, it would be more you wanted to see and explore and see where they were. And then the other thing that actually came up with your table tennis as well as the board games with your brothers, or the not the board games, but the games that you were playing, the snatch games,
mhm,
is a competitor place. So,
mm. Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
That's so
So
cool, the different plays. I love that.
yeah, and it's important because when we were younger, we were kind of these like, a little bit more naive versions of ourselves, but also more pure, right? Before the layers and layers of societal conditioning
The
came over
programming.
us. Yeah, all the programming, exactly. Like, no matter how we grew up, right? Because even at a young age, there was, of course, familial programming, but even with that, there were more pure versions of you, more authentic versions of you that were coming out.
Mm,
And through the play styles, you're able to see, okay, what lit you up as a child? Because that's actually probably what's going to light you up as an adult as well.
mhm,
So with that, the explore, it's like, in what ways can you add exploring back into your life now? There's a lot of different
mm,
activities that you can do. And they could mean being curious and learning something new, learning a new language, exploring a new city.
mhm,
And then the competitive, of course, doing board game nights or competing in
mhm.
other types of maybe more physical or mental type of games, things that light you back up, but the adult version.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that insight.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And it also helps me to get to know people through their play styles. And I find that it's like a funner way to start than just where are you from?
Yes.
Although we
Yeah.
are going to dive into that now. So
Yeah, let's do
let us
it.
know. Yeah, let us know where did you grow up and how did you start on your path of travel?
Yeah, so I grew up in Lima, Peru. So my family has been there for generations, actually. But my me and my brothers were the first ones who were actually born there. And then when I was 9, we all moved to Canada, to Toronto, where they still are there, but I've lived there for over 20 years and I'm Chinese ethnically. So I'm tricultural. And I think that as a base made me such a traveler because
Yeah.
I know that, I'm made up of different cultures literally. And at a young age, I moved to a new country, a new continent, a new environment, a new language. So from a very young age, I was almost planted the seed of, wait, there's a different way of living. And I think that stuck with me throughout. Even in high school, I remember taking a trip to Switzerland in France to take my grade 12 French credit. I traveled when I was young. And then when I graduated university, I didn't do my master's and I just traveled, which was such a off path thing to do because everybody after in my program went to the master's program right after. And I said, no, I want to take a time off and travel. And that really begun my transformative journey, my healing journey, my exploratory journey. But it was rooted into really early experiences of travel, as well as meeting people who encouraged that out of me when I was young. I can think of 2 people who were mentors of mine who really early on told me to travel when I was in high
that's so
school or even
important.
younger. So important.
Yeah,
They're almost
who were they?
Yeah, so one of them was my grade 12 world issues teacher. She doesn't go by this name anymore, but I call her Miss Morale. I will always call her that. But she got married after that. And she's still a really close person in my life. And she's always encouraged me to travel. And I took a world issues class with her. And then my table tennis coach, his name is Laura's Daw, who's my guardian angel, one of the most important people in my life. And when I was 11 or 12, that's when we met. And he, from a very young age, just encouraged me to see the world, see beyond people's skin colors and explore. And he still to this day tells me that, Yuri, travel, travel, travel. And I really took that advice to heart.
I love that. And it's crazy how important it is to have those mentors at such an early age to let you know, hey, there's another way. Like that feeling that you're feeling like of wanting more than the surroundings or the town that you're living in right now. It's like, it's okay to have that desire, and more than not bad. It's like, actually go for it and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was almost like permission. It's like, hey, you can do things in your own way. For example, I remember that my world issues teacher, Miss Morale, she, after university or after high school, actually, she worked on a cruise ship for 6 months, like at 18, 19. And I was like, wait, what? Like that just like blew me away. I thought that was so cool. And I always remember that. I didn't do that myself, but I always remember that you can travel the world, see things, meet new people and do things differently.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I actually have a similar story with my art history teacher in high school, because I also immigrated from the Philippines at a really early age, but very strict parents, like study only, and that's the path. And I remember she had mentioned she studied abroad in Rome, and that inspired me. I was like, oh, what is that? Like, you can actually do that?
Right. It almost like plants a seed in you and you're almost changed because of it. Like you can't unknow that that's a possibility.
And I think the beauty in that, and it sounds like it's the same with your teachers too, is them being authentically themselves and just showing you a different path just by them being them, and you seeing that and being like, oh, that's different, but I like it. I like the difference.
I love that you said that, because I can actually absolutely agree. Their authenticity and also their vulnerability and courage. There was so much wrapped up in that. And I don't think that at that age I really understood what that meant, obviously, at such a young age. But looking back, absolutely. I think there was a part of me that would eventually become that, and it did. But it drew me into that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, because at that age, we're all just trying to fit in, right? Especially you coming from 3 different cultures. I can understand coming from 2. I feel like I'm in this in between, like I'm not quite fully in one or the other. And so I can't even imagine having to navigate being part of 3 and explain to people, because, their question is like, what do you mean you're from Peru and Canada and you're Chinese? But like, what?
Yeah, introducing myself is one of my favorite things to do ever. And obviously, having traveled so much, I do it a lot. But I always get like puzzled looks or follow-up questions or surprise looks. And honestly, I love
Mm-hmm.
it because I love my background. I'm really lucky to be part of all three. But I actually, yeah, I've struggled with it a bunch because I'm not fully one thing. I
Mm-hmm.
look one way, I sound one way, I think one way. So it's a whole mix of things, and there are complexities
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, yeah. And like so I'm in the Philippines right now, embracing my more Filipino side. And I
Mm,
realized coming here, I was like, oh, I'm not as Filipino as I thought I was when I was in the US. You're just like, once you're actually
yeah.
there, you're like, oh, I see the difference now. But I was claiming this, but also there's so much I don't know. And but the beauty in that is there are other hyphenates out there
Hmm.
that you do relate to, right? It's almost its own
Mm,
category that you fit
hmm.
into because of the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you met other people who have similar stories to yours and can relate to
Yeah.
your struggles? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild as the more I've been sharing, more vulnerable, more transparent, the more that you magnetize the other people that are also going through or have also gone through the same struggles. And it's really
Hmm.
beautiful to actually say the words out loud and not feel
Mm,
alone in it. And I think for the longest time, especially I think maybe going into like Canada or the US, right, where it's a little bit more like, I don't know if you feel the same way in Canada, but like, yes, you're like, for me, it's like, yes, you're from the US, but also where are you really from? Right. And it's that like extra layer of
yeah,
questioning. And so yeah,
yeah,
like I think for the longest time, we're just like, oh, no, no, I'm from here. I'm from here. Just like try to blend in. But now we're like,
right.
no, I am going to embrace all my cultures.
Yeah, or they see you and obviously they can see that you have features of a different place maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, okay, you're from Canada, but there's like, but
Mm-hmm.
where, yeah, I get it. Absolutely get it. Or I'll speak Spanish and then people are just so confused because they see one thing and they hear something else.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, your Spanish is real good.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to hear. People are surprised, like, how do you speak so well? How do you know? And I always say, I'm Peruana, which means I'm Peruvian. And I actually got it tattooed on me because I love saying that so much.
Ah, I love that. I would just go to I'm a spy, and it was part of
I might use that one.
yeah. Start learning a couple more languages and really really start to mess with people. It'll be fun.
Amazing.
So, it sounds like you got inspired to travel pretty early on and you did some trips younger, but when was the first time you traveled on your own?
After university, that was a solo trip. So when I
Oh, and
did
where'd you
not do
go?
my master's Spain, so I wanted to
Okay.
volunteer. So I did a 3 week trip in Madrid to volunteer and teach English
Ah.
or help out with English. And that was my first experience of being solo, but it was still contained. It was with like an organization. There was like housing
Mhm.
provided. It wasn't just me going out into the world with a backpack, which
Mhm.
can be quite daunting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I wanted to have more of a smoother entry into that. And that was a great way of doing it because I had people to rely on or ask questions and housing was provided. So things like that, like safety was easier.
Mhm.
But then beyond that, I've done other solo trips for sure.
So, you did 3 weeks in Madrid first, and then you went back to Canada after
Yeah.
that?
I went back to Canada and then I went to like Jamaica for like an all inclusive, but that's different kind of traveling. And then I went back to Peru about a month after for the first time after I had left.
Oh.
And that was a
Oh, how was
15
that?
year, that was a 15-year gap. So that was incredible. Going back to the place that I grew up in and all that
Yeah.
was just, it was like going back to a memory, but at the
Mhm.
same time, an evolved version of what I remember. And
Yeah.
I have a lot of synchronicity stories and pretty wild, unbelievable stories. This is one of them. So I went back and one of my childhood best friends took me out to lunch. And one of the things I wanted to do going back to Peru was to go see my old home, my old childhood home. She took me to lunch and we are at this place and I open up the menu and I see the address and I see that it was literally the exact same street that I grew up on.
Oh.
And I go,
Wow.
oh my God, I grew up on the street. And she asked me, what was your restaurant's name? Because my parents owned a Chinese Korean restaurant. And then I say the name out loud and she literally goes, is it that one right there? And points behind me. And
Oh, I have goosebumps.
I turn around and I kid you not, my childhood home was literally behind me.
Oh my god. Wow. Wow,
It's
of all the places you could
unbelievable.
have
Of
gone.
all the places in the city, she could have taken me anywhere. And I was literally planted in front of my childhood home.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. What was that feeling like? Like, did you get really emotional when you turned around
It
and you're
was
like,
surreal,
ah?
of course. Yeah, it was surreal. And I remember it was a lunch and I was tasting a bunch of things and my friends ordered alcohol and I don't like daytime drink, but I did. And then I remember I was like, I have to go take a photo with it. And I'm like flushed red in these photos because I had like some alcohol, but it was incredible. It was amazing. And I got to go inside a bit and see it. And I took a photo of me in front of it. And I have this collage of my mom also in front of my old home.
Wow.
But there was like a 24-year gap. And you can
Oh,
see that
wow.
the sign is a bit worn out, the colors are a bit faded, but it's the exact same place.
That's beautiful to have that memory too, and then also be able to take a photo similar that you can compare.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible moment.
How long were you back? You said it was for a month?
It was just a couple of weeks. It was a couple of weeks. So I had about 9 months off after I finished university, and then I started working full time. And in those
Mhm.
9 months, I took those 3 trips, I was so lucky to be able to do that because I was taking 3 trips in 9 months at that age, like 22, 20. But they were all so different. One was a solo in Europe volunteering. One was with an ex partner of mine in like a beach kind of all inclusive, and one was going back home. And it all
Mhm.
kind of gave me something that it
Mhm.
just it just created a bigger desire to see more of the world.
Oh, I love that. And that's honestly the beauty of travel, especially in like getting the different types of samplings of travel too. I think
Yeah.
that's important. Is like I'm a big advocate for solo travel just because I
Mm.
love the freedom and I love the transformational aspect of it. But like I also love traveling with friends and partners and group travels. Like there's a lot of different ways to see the world. And sometimes you don't want to always just do the deep work, right? And that's totally
It's
okay.
heavy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's heavy
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Gotta
Yeah,
balance it with some resort time. Yeah.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's like a buffet, you can just take whatever you want and they're all so different, but they all have such incredible gifts in them. And they also have their own
Mhm.
challenges for sure. Like it's a mixed bag.
Exactly. Yeah, and so what do you think would be maybe a couple challenges just from thinking of those 3 trips that you went on? And if you could
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. So that first trip I was alone, right? So obviously meeting new people, even though I was in a house of volunteers, there was still an
Mhm.
element like, oh, I don't know anybody. Like there are moments where I remember being completely alone and that can be nerve wracking, especially at that
Mhm.
age and
At
the
that
first
age, yeah.
time. Yeah, for sure. And then with my ex, we fought a lot. So that
That's
was a
also what
challenge.
travel does.
That's I mean, yeah, you're locked in together, kind of you can't escape each other. So if something will come up, it's gonna be you have to work right through it. Otherwise you're kind of
Mhm.
stuck with the person. Right. And then with Peru, I don't think there was a challenge there. I think it was just an amazing trip. But maybe the
Yeah.
challenge there was too many things I wanted to do.
Yeah. And
And
just too short of a
overwhelmed
time.
with too short of a time, wanted to do everything at once, which is obviously impossible.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. The connection piece is definitely something I'm super passionate about helping people with, because that's you can travel and you can meet a bunch of people, right? You can have the group around you, but they might not feel like your people. It might still not get to the depths of connection where you actually feel like they know you, they see you, and vice versa. And that's where we feel still lonely, because we just haven't gone deep enough to where we actually feel
Yeah.
rooted.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing this up because it is my biggest challenge always is to cultivate those deeper connections, authentic
Mhm.
connections, connections where I feel safe to be myself. I will share that I'm always ready to be vulnerable and deep and talk about the bigger topics of life, but not everybody is. And sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard to find people who want to have those deeper conversations or who are open enough. And it can be extremely lonely when you don't have that. When
Mhm.
you may have that back home and those people aren't physically with you, it almost makes you even sadder because you know it's out there and these people just aren't with you. That it's something I've struggled with a lot in the past, sure.
Oh, maybe I can share some resources too. That's actually what I'm working on right now, and why I asked you about the play to begin with, because I think my secret ingredient in connection is start with play. Play actually
Mm,
allows you to get into a vulnerable state without the pressure of having to, because that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? They're like, oh, I'm afraid to show too much to a stranger, and then you're like, I feel weird about it. And then also, if you go too deep too fast, it could feel really heavy, and you don't have
Mm,
the balance of the lightness to keep the friendship balanced. And
yeah.
so if you start with the play and you end up like laughing and maybe competing in some fun games, then people's guards are naturally down, and
Mm,
then it just comes out, and they're more open to, they're like, oh, actually, yeah, I have struggled with that too. Or it's an interesting platform, but I've seen it time and time again where it opens up people in a very surprising way, because even as we were talking about play, it like brings you back to childhood, and sometimes you probably haven't talked about in a really long time.
yeah. Yeah, I love that you're sharing that. I think that play, as we grow older, we forget to play. We don't
Mm-hmm.
make time for it, we don't prioritize it. We're so busy with an endless to-do list that never stops. And I think with
Mm-hmm.
play, it kind of just strips that away at least a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
it allows you to laugh. And I think with
Yeah.
laughter, there's so much that can come from that. And when you're in a situation when it's strangers, maybe you can find some common ground. And I think that's
Yeah.
where the root of connection starts, right?
Exactly. And also, like, play, if you're doing the things that light you up, that means you're already kind of in this more magnetic state. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're, say, doing I actually in Buenos Aires, I hosted a relay race. And it was like 100 people that showed up. It was so
What?
fun. Yeah, I was like, oh, I need to go back there. People,
Wow,
Argentinians
please
love to
do
show
this.
up.
Yeah, they're ready
It's
to
fun.
do things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they like stayed after I left. I was like, guys, it's 8 o'clock. We started this at 12. I'm
Oh
gonna go
my
to dinner. And
gosh.
they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
thank you. Like, we'll clean up afterwards. We're like, okay.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so yeah, all of them loved the play piece, but I think that was like the big factor is like the laughter, and everyone showing up and wanting to just have fun, and in that process of having fun on their own, they were attracting other people to that light of themselves. Because when you're playing, you're not like, you kind of have to get out of your mind into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
whatever stress that you might have been thinking about, it's like, okay, well, now I'm like doing a three-legged race with someone, so I can't really think about that.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
it's a great way to get you out and just be in the present.
Yeah. Get you out of your mind and into your body. Be
Hmm.
embodied, which is so powerful.
It's
I've
so,
learned a
so
lot more
powerful.
about that embodiment in the past couple of years. And there's so much wisdom in our body, but our mind just takes over. Our reptilian mind just takes over.
Yeah, yeah, and then we stop listening to our body too. I think that's the other thing, is that it's just so easy to stay in the mind and think and plan and strategize, and then you just find that there's this disconnect, and you almost feel like a zombie in your life after a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Yeah, you're an autopilot and it's just the programming running you.
Exactly. And I know that, so you had gone back after your trips, after the 9 months. And did you go back and get your master's, or did you go straight into working?
I went straight into working into the corporate world. So in my past life, I was a CPA, so a chartered professional
Ah.
accountant, very
Yeah.
corporate. I worked in one of the big fours, which is one of the biggest four accounting firms in the world, PwC, and it was some of the hardest years of my entire life,
It's
for
tough.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, very brainy, extremely mental kind of, work. And it was tough because I didn't want to be there. I didn't enjoy the subject matter, but I was
Mhm.
in this path that I thought I had to continue on.
Mhm.
And once I knew that it wasn't meant for me, but I couldn't leave because they pay for you to get your certification. And
Ah.
the trade is that you have to get your CPA while working for them. So it's a very difficult environment to be in. And if I left, I had to pay out what they had paid, which was like $10,000. And anyways, I
Yeah.
didn't do that, but I knew that once I could leave, I was out of there. And that took me till the end of 2019. And I told myself that my gift to myself after enduring 3+ years of this kind of lifestyle, it was really hard for me, I would travel the world. I would become a digital nomad. That was my gift
Oh,
to myself.
this
This
was
is
in
the end
2019?
of 2019. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I was like,
let's see where
I
we're
need to see
going with the
where this
story.
goes.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see where we're going with the story. I've never quite share this story in public like this, but I literally handed my laptop on December 20th, 2019. And my birthday's in January, so I wanted to be in Bali for my birthday. And in January 14th of 2020, I left Toronto with a backpack, a one-way ticket, an indefinite trip. And for
Oh, wow.
me, 2020 was going to be my travel the world year, my digital nomad year, my reinvention of my career. And about 10 days into this
Oh,
indefinite journey, I learned about this new virus in Asia, and it completely derailed my entire plan.
oh man. Oh, my heart sinks for you.
Yeah, yeah, that was very unexpected. We all know what happened in 2020, and for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was I had left my job, my career, a huge part of my identity, and I thought that my dream of becoming a digital nomad and traveling the world was over. I literally had weeks of that reality. I was like, I missed the boat. I can't do this anymore. I didn't know what was gonna happen,
Yeah.
obviously. But now looking back at it, it was where the Yuri who you're talking to right now really started. That's where that,
Oh,
yeah, there was a lot that happened in 2020, and it really became the foundation of who I am now.
wow. Wow. I just keep getting chills every time you speak. I'm just like, that is, yeah, the timing on that, man, it's always tough to hear whenever, like, I've had a couple guests on now and they're like, yeah, and I gave it up and then 2020, like, oh no.
Yeah. I was going to say, not to say that my experience was harder than anybody else. We all struggle. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was such a dismantling and death of an identity. And then being
Mm-hmm.
quarantined in the Canadian winter and not have a
Oh
source of
man.
income, like that compounded so much. But I think because there was so much pressure in that way, it pushed me even deeper into healing, transformation, inner work, and spirituality.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's, at the absence of all of the structures, the identity, it's like you find yourself in all of that because you have to,
There's
right?
no
It's
choice.
when
It was
there's no
like, yeah,
choice.
everything was just broken in my life in that way. Yeah.
And I've talked to other people about this too, where it's like there's no clearer path that you have than when you hit rock bottom because you have no
Oh,
other choice.
yeah.
And someone had actually asked had joined our conversation, and he was like, well, what if you didn't climb your way out, like what if you didn't do that? And I was like, then I mean, I don't think I'd be here. Like,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. And as you're sharing that, the quote that comes to mind is that you don't know how strong you are until strong is your only choice.
That's
Something along
beautiful.
those
Yeah.
lines. But it's true. When you're pushed to rock bottom, then it's like, okay, my only choice is to either get up or just stay here.
Yeah.
It comes down to that.
So tell me, so you had to fly back from Bali once everything
I never even made it to
started to.
Bali. So this part is
Oh,
important. I never
wow.
even made it to Bali. I went to Europe for a little bit because I wanted to visit some friends. It was going to be a couple of
Mhm.
weeks, and then I was going to go to Bali for like indefinite amount of time. But in my Europe 2 weeks, that's when I found out about this new virus. So I didn't even make it to Asia, and it was so difficult because I had Southeast Asia clothes in my backpack. I wasn't really prepared to be in Europe, but then I didn't want to go
Yeah.
home, which is Toronto and cold winter, and I was in this really weird limbo stage of, wait, what am I doing? Where do I go? What do I do? And I had to go back to Canada when March 2020 hit, because that's when I feel
Mhm.
like the world really realized that this was not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I was waking up to messages from friends being like, where are you? Are you stuck somewhere? Come home. Like,
Yeah.
Trudeau's
Yeah.
closing the borders. Like, this is no joke anymore, Yuri. And my fear was to be stuck in an Airbnb with no food and no
Mhm.
healthcare and being alone. So I remember it was March 18th, 2020, that I flew back to Toronto, and I just head
Wow.
straight to a quarantine. And that was the beginning of this next phase of my life.
Wow. That's okay. More goosebumps. And so when you came, did you give up your apartment and all of your things when you had left?
I was living with my parents, so I just had my room still there, thank God. And I just went back to living with them. But that made it a lot more difficult because I went from being absolutely free in the world to now going
Mhm.
back and living with my parents. So that was a big
Yeah.
switch, very quick.
And what were some, if you could share some of the things that you had to work through during this time period that were really transformative and contributed to who you are now?
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. That's when my meditative practice really was born. I started really diving into meditation. I had tried it before, but I never could quite get it in a way. And I remember there was this one song by Above and Beyond, if anybody knows who they are, they're DJs. And they released this album called Flow State. So they're DJs with high energy and EDM music and all that, but they released this album called Flow State that was a meditative album. And
Oh,
this
wow.
one track just did it for me. And they have a version that with spoken word in English and in Spanish. And I remember just making a playlist of that just one track solo, like instrumental with the English and the Spanish spoken word. And I looped it. And I would just listen to that over and over and over and over and over
Yeah.
as I would sit and meditate and just try to quiet the mind and do all the things that I thought I had to do. And eventually I got the flow. Like I reached this point of flow with meditation. That became my most listened to song of that year.
Wow.
And then that's also a time where I just dove into books. I found this online store with discounted books, and I bought so many books. I read so much that year. I just really went inwards. I remember now that I'm saying the word inwards, I made this image my lock screen, and it was this beautiful like single line drawing of somebody meditating, and it said, if you can't go outside, go inside.
Wow.
And I have chills now because that I stared at that on my lock screen, I think that whole year, and it was beautiful because it was so true. I could not go outside. Literally, I couldn't see people. It was winter. I didn't want to go outside, so I literally went inside.
Wow. You did some inner exploration.
Yeah, deep inner exploration. I remember I still have this photo and I posted it on my Instagram to summarize the year, but I had all these post-its of just quotes and notes and things, and it became this huge map on my wall. It made me look like I was crazy, like I was mapping out how to like conquer the world. But serial killer. Like it was like that. And I had all these books and like highlights. And the book that really cracked me open, I remember, was Michael A. Singer's The Untethered Soul. Whoa,
Oh.
that book was so profound. And I remember having all these highlights, all these post-its on it. And that book really helped me understand that I am not my thoughts. I am the awareness behind them. And that plus meditation, I was able to really create space from my reptile mind, all the thoughts that come up, all the noise, the 60,000 thoughts that we have a day. And slowly, I first had the realization that I'm not the thoughts. I am a being behind the thoughts, an awareness of them, a witness of them. And that's when I was able to really understand that I have a lot more agency and control in my life than I realized.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And honestly, I 100% agree. And I think that was also a pivotal moment for me. And it's important to share that to the people listening, that whatever thoughts that are coming in your mind, that's not you. And I love that you took control of that. And by listening to those tracks, you quieted your mind so that you could separate those thoughts from who you were. And then by reading those books, you started to read and understand the mechanics of what was happening. And so it all kind of is additive to all this transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the thoughts, one of the stats that I really changed my life is that we have over 60,000 thoughts per day, which is an insane number.
That's so insane.
Insane number, right? 60,000, 80% are negative, and over 90% are from the past.
Wow.
So if you quantify that, only a very tiny amount are you actually thinking, that you are consciously thinking, that is positive, that's reinforcing, that is expansive. So much of that is just garbage in a way. It's programming. We're robots.
Yeah. My favorite question to ask is when a thought comes in that, doesn't make you feel good, to ask, who does that belong to? Because it's, from your stats, it's not you. So
who's saying that? Who's saying that? Or is this helpful? Do I have to think this thought? Is it true? Is it true? That's a huge one. I think a lot of us can be so hard on ourselves, me included. And sometimes it's like, okay, no, like I'm not these things. You have to like almost fight back with the thoughts and have the inner dialogue, but without the awareness that you are not the thought itself, you can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. You think that that is the truth, and you live in this distorted reality where you further spiral yourself into this negative loop because you don't have a pattern breaker to kind of
Mm-hmm.
step in, because
To
you're not saying
disrupt
these
it.
thoughts out loud. Yeah, you're not telling your friends, yeah, I feel awful. This is exactly what I think about myself. It's like you don't tell your friends that. You're not saying that out loud, and so no one's there externally to disrupt that
Mm-hmm.
pattern. Like you have to do that
Mm-hmm.
work yourself. Otherwise you're stuck in that spiral. Or, get a therapist to tell you like, hey, what are you thinking?
Yeah, therapy. I love therapy. I've been a proponent for so long, but I can only do so much because
Exactly. Yeah.
in that 1 hour sitting with the therapist, you can talk about these things and get their perspective. But what about the 23 other hours that you're not seeing the therapist every single day?
Mm-hmm.
And the thought that comes to mind also that I want to share is that in the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, he calls this voice that we all have like an annoying roommate. An annoying roommate who lives with you, who's there all the time, who can't stop talking, but it's just talking crap, like just
Yeah.
annoying and not useful. So it's like a roommate. And I love that. It helped me a lot to kind of separate myself.
Dissociate.
Disassociate,
Yeah, yeah, I
sure. Yeah.
love that. Yeah, you have to give it a name, give it another,
Yeah.
personality outside of you so that you can start to separate.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that technique.
Mm-hmm.
So after kind of some of the inner work that you were doing during this time, what what did you do then to climb out of this hole that you were in?
Yeah, so the first thing that I did was to move out of my parents' house. I definitely recognized that it was just not a conducive environment to me being my healthiest. And I moved in with a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who's actually visiting me in about 2 days. So that's super exciting.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Jen, shout out to you. But what was really powerful was that I wanted to move out. At this point, I wasn't making any money. So about 6 months after I had quit, 7 months after I quit my job. This is now July 2020, and I knew I needed to move out, but I wanted to have some sort of income before I moved out. So I gave myself July to really find a job, find something, make some sort of money. And I had known about digital nomads for a couple of years at that point, but I wasn't one, obviously. And I remember July 27th, I moved in August. And July 27th, I wrote that on a sticky note that I will make money before August 2020. And July 27th, I
Oh,
landed my first client, my first virtual client. And I was
wow,
so
congrats.
happy. Thank you. And I'm still working with her, and it's given me so much. And why I'm sharing that story, well, multiple reasons, but the main one is that it was just so powerful to have that intention, that set that goal, and just like believe in myself. And I was able to do it, and that really started my digital nomad. I mean, I was still in Toronto and I couldn't travel, but it was my virtual remote work career begun then.
Oh wow. So wait, July 27th was when that first client came in. And when did you write down that goal?
Probably the beginning of that month.
Oh, so
So I
early
think,
July. So
yeah, I
wow,
think
that's
I think July decided like, hey, I'm moving out in August. And I was like, I need to have some sort of income. And yeah, I applied to so many things. And like the last week, I like landed this client. And I'll shout out to where I found this client because it can help so many people, I'm sure,
yes.
especially females. www.hiremymom.com, which is
Oh.
one of the funniest names ever. You do not have to be a mother. I am not one yet, but it's a platform that every single day there are new job postings, and it's all mostly entrepreneurs who are looking for help in all kinds of realms: VAs, OBMs, bookkeepers, social media managers. And I just learned about it probably just Googling, but that's where this Jennifer Dawn, who is still a client of mine who I love dearly, found me on there, or I found her on there. And I highly recommend that platform. It's free to use. It's incredible.
And at this point, did you know what service you were offering, or were you kind of just taking spaghetti to a wall and see what hit, what stuck?
Yeah, so I had known about virtual assistants or VAs,
Hmm.
and it's pretty admin kind of work, which I have a lot of skills in that realm because I've worked in corporate. I've worked in not worked exactly in that realm, but I tech savvy. I have skills, I have transferable skills. So I was like, I feel like that's the easiest way into something that's virtual. And that's what she hired me for. And looking back, like she hired me at like $20 an hour American. And I remember really early on, and I didn't do this a lot in the beginning, but I asked for a pay raise like really early on because I could see that my PwC experience was so valuable. And I love her response because she said, I love the fact that you asked me this. I was waiting for it. So I know that you are so much more capable than what you are charging. So she gave me 30 an hour. And then she told me, if you stick around for this long, I'll give you 35 an hour. And I was like, whoa, like this is cool. I'm like making
awesome.
out like US money on my own. And I was like the beginning of it all. And I've come so far from that. I love sharing that story. I've barely even told that story ever, but I'm still working with her, and it's just incredible how far I've come since that moment.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing, because no one ever shares that messy middle. And I think it's important that it's like when you're at the depths and you find that one like little glimmer of light, oh, it feels so good because it feels like, oh, finally something's happening, something's shaking up the stagnancy.
Yeah. And what's coming to my mind that I want to share too is that from March to July until I landed that client, I spent a lot of time journaling, like answering questions. What do I want to create in my life? Who do I want to be? How do I want my work to feel? Like I really got clear, or as clear as I could up and then. And going back to setting intentions, I think that's really powerful because I feel like I almost called that into my life. And in a way it really happened
100%.
because yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so powerful when you're asking, the universe or whatever you believe in of that this is what I want and I believe I deserve it. And in a way that really did manifest for me.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, if you don't know what you want, you can't even recognize it when it comes to you. And so by doing the work to actually guide the universe and write down what you want, when it came to you, you knew what it was and you were better able to actually accept it, versus if you were kind of like still in your head and not really, sure, and still just throwing a bunch of things at the wall, then maybe that wouldn't have come through, right? Maybe you wouldn't have found the website, which then led you to this specific opportunity. So yeah, the importance of the internal work and the journaling questions it's so key.
Yeah. And I also want to share that it's okay if you don't know exactly what that looks like, especially if you're doing a big pivot like I was. I had no idea that I would be working in this manner of the things that I'd be doing, but I did know how I wanted it to feel. That is really powerful. The feeling that you have when you have achieved or when you're in the environment that you're calling in. Does that feel grounded? Does it feel safe? Do you feel like you're inspired? Do you feel like you're encouraged to, be creative? Because I used to work in a very opposite world, very uncreative, very, almost robotic. I was auditing
girl,
companies.
you were an accountant. Yeah.
I was auditing companies, which is
okay. Because you were doing CPA
a
work.
whole other side of the accounting world, which is just like so intense. And yeah, it was dry. It was very dry. And I am
long hours too, right?
Long hours, miserable work. Nobody likes you. No one tells you that about that kind of work is that no one will like you. Like as an auditor, you're the most annoying person ever. And being in an environment like that really does something to your psyche. Like no one wants you to be there. Like I hated it. I genuinely hated it. Yeah. And now when I reflect a lot in my life, and I'm so proud of the people that I work with now because they all love having me around. They all, are excited to see me, and, it's like a happy, harmonious kind of energy flow, which is appreciated. We say thank you. We say please. In my old job, my corporate world, we never said it was a thankless job. And I knew that I wanted the opposite of that.
Yeah, no, that's so important to highlight those differences too, and the importance of how you want to feel when you're doing it. And we weren't ever pushed towards thinking in that direction when we're younger. That's not something that they really teach us. It's something that you have to find out for yourself. And I think that that's a shame that we have to go through the darkness in order to be able to find, these answers or even know what questions to ask ourselves.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that so many people stay in that path, in that dark programmed path. The majority of people will, unfortunately. That's just the nature of things. There's to take a path that is unknown takes a lot of guts and courage, and it's a big risk. And the
Mm-hmm.
majority of people prefer to be safe. And, ultimately to each their own. But I
Yeah.
just, from a young age, knew that there was more out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that there's a difference between trying what's out there and then knowing, okay, and choosing, yes, this is the path that I want. But it's even just the trying and exploring within you, within the world, to be able to make that decision for you rather
Mm-hmm.
than have that decision made for you because of
Mm-hmm.
the circumstances that you started off in. And I think
Yeah.
that's the key difference, because if that's for you and you like genuinely you're like, auditing is my jam, then hey, some people,
Absolutely.
that's, yeah,
They
but it
love
has
it,
to be a conscious
yeah.
choice.
It
Mm-hmm.
has to be a conscious choice, and I'm glad you brought that word up. It's the conscious and unconscious. That's where it
Mm-hmm.
really all lies. Some people are just
Yeah.
unconscious, some people are conscious.
Exactly. And so no one's knocking the path that you're on, but it's like just ask yourself the question, is it the right one for you? Because you deserve, no matter where you are in life, you deserve to feel the way that you want to feel, and to make the impact, to have the purpose in this life. Like we all have very short lives on this earth, and what are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do with the time that you have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
absolutely agree.
after, yeah, so after you got your first client,
Mm-hmm.
that was in 2020 still. And then I know that for the last couple years after that, you did finally get to go on your digital nomading adventure.
Yes, yes. So let's go with the timeline. So I moved out. I was working now with my first client, and I got my second, my third. Things were flowing. I was making money. And I knew that when the borders opened up or it was safe to travel again, I was out of Canada. I was really out of Canada. No, for real, because I was just
Yeah.
I could not wait any longer. So one other thing that happened that really opened up my life in so many ways was that I found an online community of female entrepreneurs with a
Oh.
spiritual, conscious, witchy tone to it, which is exactly my vibe. And I'm so grateful to them because I got to meet women who had been on this journey and were ahead of me, who have now become mentors and lifelong friends and soul sisters. And being in the pandemic, when you were so isolated, I was so isolated. Having like weekly calls, meeting new people, sharing stories was such a lifeline for me. And I'll shout them out. They were called Las Comadres. They're now called the Anima Collective, ran by Jamie Nolan, who I
Oh.
absolutely adore. And they were an in-person community, but the pandemic took them virtual, which is how I, luckily
Mm.
enough, got introduced to it. And I learned so many things, expanded my business, gained a lot more confidence, learned more about myself. And then they're mostly based in Miami. So the opportunity came up for me to go there. Jamie actually offered like a house sitting exchange, which is
Oh,
amazing because I
wow.
got to go to Miami and live in her house for 3 weeks and take care of her
Wow.
parrot, her bird, Mango, and just take care of the house. And I was like, yes, I'm
Yeah.
in. I'm in. So I went to Miami, and then it became the first time I traveled since the pandemic started. But I got to grow my network massively. I got
Mhm.
to be around just really incredible people who really inspired me and taught me a lot. And then I was there for a bit. Eventually went back home, went back to Miami a bunch of times, but I turned 30 in 2022. And my dream of being in Bali had been a dream of mine for about 5 years at that point. And I told myself that by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be in Bali. So
Mhm.
I once again left. I left, and this time I left. So 2022, I did leave, and I ended up going to Bali, and I gave myself 4 months, and it was incredible. It was exactly what I needed. It was so healing. I met some incredible people. Yeah, it was amazing. And I
Which
became a
part of
nomad
Bali you're
in
in?
that way.
Ibu?
I'm mostly in Canggu, but I went to Ubud
Okay.
and Uluwatu and Gili and just made incredible friends,
All
a lot
over.
of whom I met here just recently, which is so
No.
special. Yeah, Bali
Yeah.
just keeps giving. And it was amazing. And I became a nomad. I was traveling, I was working abroad. I actually was living that
Mhm.
lifestyle, and I learned a lot. It was not always easy, for sure. There was parts of it that were difficult, but it was exactly what I wanted, and I need it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I will say I just left Bali. I did 4 months in Ubud. I actually celebrated my 30th in Bali as well, but I'm a couple years older, so that was in 2019. So much
Whoa,
residence.
synchronicities.
I know, so many synchronicities. And so that was in 2022 when you went. And then after Bali, did you just continue traveling around
So
the
this is
Southeast
where
Asia? And yeah.
this is where the story gets interesting, if it hasn't already.
Yeah.
So 20, let's go back a bit. September 2021, let's go back a bit more. About 2018, I learned what digital nomads were from my cruise called the Nomad Cruise. I'll shout them out as
Oh,
well
you
because
went.
yeah, I
Okay.
went on NC7, and that really just opened up my eyes to the possibilities of digital nomads and travel and entrepreneurs. And that planted the seed. And then I wanted to become a digital nomad. And then from that community, I learned about remote year. I don't know if you know what
Okay.
remote year is.
Yeah. I
Okay.
do.
So then I learned that I knew about remote year, and I wanted to initially do a 4-month Asia remote year trip. And
Hmm.
the day I was scheduled to pay my deposit and get on a call with them to do the whole thing and go for it, I was scrolling on the website and I was seeing their programs that they had. And back then, they don't do it anymore, but back then, all the programs were called something, a name of a city or somebody who left the legacy behind, like Tesla or Kobe or Shangri-La. And I remember it was the last one on the website, on the page, and it said the Yuri program.
Oh, it's
So
made for you.
I literally saw my name and I screamed a scream I've never screamed. I remember, and I clicked in it and it said, half the most transformative year on Yuri, 12 months around the
Wow.
world. And to this day, I will never forget that feeling. So
Oh,
I embarked on that journey right after Bali. I did a 12-month remote year journey called Yuri.
it was
Like
literally your program.
we were
Yeah.
called the Yuri program. There was the Yuri marketplace, Yuri credits. There was the Yuri prom. There was a most
Wow.
valuable Yuri award. So for 12 months,
Wow.
this was my life, which it will never seem real to me, to be honest, but that was my reality. And that plus Bali, plus a little bit after that, was a total of 20 continuous months of traveling that I just finished. And that's why I've landed in Buenos Aires and I'm not moving
Yeah.
for a while.
That's fair. That's fair. Honestly, I did something similar, and I, did Buenos Aires for 6 whole months in one stint because
Yeah,
it's a great place to rest, everyone.
to land.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so remote year, having the whole year basically be dedicated to you, which I love. Because talk about an identity shift, right? Like you went from like losing your identity, right before the pandemic happened, right, where your identity was tied up into your career, to now you have this whole transformative year where you get to lean into being Yuri. And a Yuri, did you win the Yuri award, by the way, or no?
I did. I won on the third month. I was the
Okay,
most
I was
valuable
gonna say.
Yuri on the third month. Yeah,
I was like,
which
that's
is
the most kind of
hilarious. Yes, all that you're saying is true. Talk about an identity rebirth in many ways.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What was the experience like? So funny. I've never been on a remote year trip, but I've kind of run into it a couple serendipitous ways, I will say.
Okay.
So when I lived in Chicago, I actually had moved from San Diego to Chicago, and that was my first big, like, give everything up in life and go. And this was in 2017. Ended a 10-year relationship in this process.
Wow.
And then I started dating someone I had just met in Chicago who was formerly on remote year for a whole year. I did not know what digital nomading was at this time. I was in consulting at this point, in healthcare consulting. So
Wow.
I had no idea what remote year was until I dated this man. And he just raved about remote year. And we actually ended things because, as you know, as a digital nomad, when you date someone who is settled or is not digital nomad, it's hard. And then you're like, well, I'm going to go now.
Yeah,
and it's like,
absolutely.
okay, yeah. So that's kind of what happened with us, except I wasn't the digital nomad in this case, right? So it was very much like I was the quote unquote local. But that like stuck in my mind, right? Where I was like, oh, I mean, I love to travel, but at this point I was solo traveling to escape the consulting
Yeah.
position that I didn't love, not like this grand remote year where you get to live in all these different places. Fast forward, I think another year, or actually pandemic, I ended up joining TEDx, TED Talk circles online as a way to meet people, and I was able to volunteer for that next TEDx that they were hosting in person back in, I think, once we were in 2021. And one of the speakers that had applied actually had written a book after her year of remote year. And I think she was in remote year
Wow.
3. That was the third year that they did.
Three. Wow.
Yeah, 3, exactly. And I think
Wow.
actually my the guy that I dated, he was in remote year 1, which is wild to think
That's
about.
amazing. I would have loved to experience that because everything was so new and there weren't that many back then. It wasn't as huge as
Mhm.
it is now. Obviously, the pandemic made it a
Mhm.
lot more accessible. So I'm so curious about what that was like.
Yeah, so it's wild because I met someone on 1, and then I met someone on 3, and then in 2020 was also when I started nomading, but in the US remote. And actually around that July, August, I had this feeling. I was like, I don't think I'm going to stay in the US for long. Like, I have this itch to
Mm.
go international. And I was about to jump onto the remote year at that time. But then I ended up going to Mexico instead, and kind of digital nomading on my own. And then I realized, oh, actually, I can do this. But I've always been curious about remote year. And so now you kind of have traveled on your own solo and nomaded, and then you've been on this more structured trip. What do you think, like, the biggest difference, the biggest positives, the biggest maybe cons of both types of travel?
Yeah, great question. So solo travel, obviously you're alone. That's a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're deciding everything, you plan everything on yourself, by yourself. That can be great because you don't owe anybody any of your energy. You don't have to compromise. You can just do whatever you like.
Mm-hmm.
Remote year plans everything for you. They plan your flights, they plan your accommodations, your co-work space. You have a community of people. You have a city manager who's a local expert. So you have all the resources available to you. So the convenience factor of it is incredible for remote year. The
Mm-hmm.
downside of that is that it's 1 month at a time in one place, which in my opinion is not a lot of time. It can
No,
be,
yeah.
it depends on just what stage of life, what kind of traveler you are. But for me, I love routines. And by the time I was settling into my routines in the place, I was heading out already. So that was hard, but at the same time, I got to see and live through so much. And the
Mm-hmm.
convenience factor is great. Like for the value that you get is amazing. And you meet other people. So you have the ability to be on your own, but also have options to be social. So it does give
Mm-hmm.
you a whole package and you can just kind of choose your own adventure to some sort of limitations. But on the flip side, solo travel can be so adventurous and you meet new people and kind of like do your own thing, or you can just do your own. I mean, it's just so freeing. It just really depends on
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you find, I think one of the things, as we were talking about, like, being from different cultures, how did you feel being a woman of 3 different cultures going into remote year? Did you feel like there was enough diversity within the group that you were on?
I would say no. There was mostly Americans, and not to say anything about it, but Americans. But I was really hoping it'd be a more spread out kind of, cohort of people. We did have some
Hmm.
Europeans, no Latinos really, no really Asians. So I would have
Hmm.
loved to be more diverse. Maybe in the future it will be, but in that way, yeah, I wish there was more diversity.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I had read some things online where I was like, I don't know. And like, I really
Mm,
value kind of that diversity, but also, the structure and the convenience factor was really attractive for that as well. What was your
mhm.
favorite stand out? If there was like a moment that you just basked in, like, the being where you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. Like,
Yeah,
what was that
yeah.
moment for you?
So many things, but I went skydiving in Cape Town and that was
Ah,
amazing.
oh, amazing.
So that was
Wait,
just like
how long was your free fall?
30 seconds. I don't remember. 30 seconds maybe.
Yeah.
But that was my first time skydiving. It was my first time in Cape Town in South Africa. And that month in itself was one of my favorite months ever. And there was like 50 of us in that month. And yeah, that was like the peak, literally the peak of that in a way. Another highlight of mine is in Medellin in Colombia on my 11th month. So many people from my life outside of remote year all happened to be in Medellin. So
Oh, wow.
I got to have reunions and continuous reunions. A friend visited me, and Medellin is amazing, so I loved it. And then also I got to go back home to Peru and Lima. That was one of the
Oh,
destinations.
wow.
And I got to combine my remote year people with my childhood friends, which was amazing.
Wow.
That was really special.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things that were incredible, but those were standouts.
So, and you got to spend more time in your birth country, birth city, in like a different version of yourself too, which I think would have
Yeah,
been
it
like,
was wild.
wow.
So when going back to that time where I saw remote year having a Yuri program and then I see Lima, Peru, it was like
Hmm.
crazy that they were going back to my hometown. And we actually stayed in Miraflores, which is the district that I grew up in. So we
Wow.
stayed 20 minutes from my childhood home.
Wow. Is there something there? Have you looked into your astrocartography by any chance? I know you
I
mentioned the
have. I
witchy.
don't know what I have in Peru, but I'll look back. And I'm curious at what I have here too. But yeah, astrocartography is really powerful.
It is, yeah. So actually, for me, Buenos Aires, like I'm drawn to it. My Venus line cuts right through it, and I found this out after I had spent 9 months there, and I was like, "This is why." It said for me, it's a very indulgent place, and I was like, "Yes, it is." You know, like all I
Oh,
did was eat steaks and drink wine and see the theater and and date, and I was
amazing.
like, "Yeah, very indulgent place, but
That is very
beautiful."
Venus
But
energy.
yeah, it is very Venus energy. So I'm curious, like it seems like the magnet point for Lima was really pivotal for you. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I'm curious to see how Buenos Aires, if it's more like moon energy or something, because it sounds like it's something where you're like, okay, I'm going to settle in for a little bit.
Yeah, we're grounding. Yeah, good to know. I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, it's always a fun little tidbit. So going from kind of the speed of remote year back now into a little bit more calming, more grounding. What are your focus areas? Things that you learned from the speed that you now want to change in your life now that you have a little bit more time.
Yes, my number one focus in coming here and settling for at least a bit is my health. It is
Mm,
something that I definitely compromise while traveling. I
mhm,
do not eat well when I don't eat healthy. Let me rephrase. I don't eat healthy when I'm in travel mode. It's hard for me to stick to a routine to work out. So I barely honestly worked out while I was traveling, which I'm not proud of. But now I'm really focusing on shifting that and just, being more cognizant of my health and what I'm putting in my body and really devoting or prioritizing that in my life and also my business, my career, focusing
mhm.
on making more money, having a greater impact, putting myself out there. It was things that I didn't prioritize while I was traveling. There was just too many things going on that I could not. So now that travel has kind of stopped and I've intentionally have paused it, I'm now really focusing on those things that I want to grow and continue developing.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I think that, there might be this even misconception with digital nomads that in order to be a digital nomad, you have to travel fast and you see the world and the pressure is on to like do all the things in a very short time frame. And it's like, no, this is a lifestyle. And as a lifestyle, it could be so varied. And whatever is going to be the best for you, your health, your career, whatever your priorities are, is going to need to come first.
Hmm.
And a lot of, I think, maybe even internal pressure in ourselves. So you're like, if I'm
Hmm.
only here for this amount of time, I have to go
Yes.
see 10 different
That's
things.
exactly it. 100%. That's one thing that I have never really quite processed or shared. But in remote year, I knew I was there for a month. So I want to do these things. So I had this internal pressure. I want to do these things by this amount of time. But now that I'm
Mhm.
here indefinitely, I am so happy just on my couch, watching Netflix and just
Yeah.
relaxing and not having a packed schedule because I don't have a deadline.
Hmm.
So slow
Yeah.
matting is the term that I'm really
Slow matting.
embodying now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it could be both. Like we live in this world where and is a beautiful possibility, right? And you can watch TV and have a routine and want maybe more of that grounded life, and you also want to explore and travel and see new things. Like you can live both in one, and it doesn't need to necessarily be like, oh, okay, well, if you're not traveling, are you really nomading, right? I think that's another thing that can come into your mind too, and then you realize, no, you just got to do what's best for you, even if that means you're maybe like only seeing a couple things, but like
Yeah.
you're prioritizing other areas of your life.
Yeah, I think one of the things I am focusing more on is relationships as well. So,
Hmm.
not seeing things or having the experiences, but more about cultivating the community that I want to have around me. And
Hmm.
I think being in one place really allows you to do that, because when you're on the go all the
Mm-hmm.
time and moving around, it's hard. You meet people, they're great, you have a good vibe, and then it's like, hey, bye, see you later, or I don't know when we'll see you again. So that's also one thing that I
Mm-hmm.
really have missed, is having that like consistency of seeing friends and really
Mm-hmm.
building that those deeper connections.
Yeah, and I find that so initially I was traveling every month as well when I first started, and I found that the places where I stayed at for 3 months minimum,
Mm,
that was the sweet spot, and like 3 to 6 months is perfect because around month two is when you feel like, oh, I actually can have a deeper connection with this person. People are more willing to invest in you as well if you're there for 3 months at least,
yeah.
because it's not like, oh, I see you at one event and then that's it, right? It's like you can
Hmm.
get to the point where you do more mundane things of like, hey, you want to go do this errand with me? Or like, hey, I'll come over and we'll just like co-work together. And it's
Yeah.
those moments that are really beautiful, the ones where you're not necessarily like having to do a specific activity.
Hmm.
You're kind of just like sitting in the moments of silence and then also connecting. That I think only happens around that, like if you're staying for at least 3 months moment.
Yeah, you need that time. It builds over time
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then having the intentionality of wanting to build that
Mm,
community is a big piece too. It's like,
hmm.
okay, is your intention to explore every single part of the city, or is it to take a step back and, maybe you're going to just cafes a bunch, but like maybe you're getting deeper connections that way. And
Hmm.
that's honestly more fulfilling in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it just depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, and there's different seasons too. I like to
Hmm.
travel in seasons now, where I'm like, okay, what is my goal for this next quarter? And maybe it is for me at the moment, it's health and career. So it's like, okay, well, this first quarter, that's what we're focusing on, and then maybe next quarter we focus on networking and community and collaborations, and then understanding, okay, if that's my focus area, then what part of the world is going to support me being, putting that as a priority. And then I look at astrocartography and then, a few other layers in that as well. But
Yeah.
intentionality is really important.
Yeah, I love that. And breaking it down, having seasons, that's really powerful as well. And it doesn't have to be a huge, long, big life decision. And you can just take it in smaller chunks and things
Yeah,
flow.
yeah.
Seasons, literally, like the weather can affect you so deeply, or even as women, our
Hmm.
menstrual cycles, seasons. We have
Yes.
literal seasons in our bodies. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm in a place and then one morning I'll wake up and I'm like, I have to leave. And then, I go.
I
Have
don't
you ever
think
had
I've
that
had
type of
that
moment?
actually. No, I haven't had that moment. I think I've had the moment of like I'm ready for the next place, but not often.
Ah,
Maybe I have a couple times, but thankfully not often.
yeah, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's more just like I see it as I feel like in every destination I'm there to fulfill something. Like I'm meant to meet someone,
Mm,
experience something, learn something. It's
mm.
almost kind of like a video game of sorts, where it's like once you meet the sage, you get the little scroll, you read it, you do the task, then you're like, "Ah, okay, I'm good."
Yeah.
And I feel like I get to that moment sometimes where like it happened in Bali where I was there for 4 months, and I finally, one of my last weekends, I went to a tantra retreat where there were so many serendipitous moments that led me there, and even during the retreat. And then it was this weird feeling after that was done, where I was like, oh, I think that was it. That
I
was the
think I'm
thing.
done.
That
Like I
was
think
yeah.
I did it.
Yeah, I think I did it. I can go now. And then
Oh,
off to
that's
the
so
next place.
cool. I love that. Yeah. I think there's energy in every city. There's an
Mm,
energy in every city. And for me, now that I've seen and lived in literally all over the world, I connect with some places so much easier than others. There are
mm-hmm.
some places that I just cannot catch the rhythm, can't catch the vibe. And it's like this body, like this intense, feeling in my body that, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to be here. This is easy for me. Or it's like, oh, something's just not clicking here.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it also depends on like where we're at too in our seasons, right? There might be a season in life where you come back to that place and you're like, oh yeah, this feels right. Or vice versa, where you're like, oh, like it's not working at all for me right now.
Mm,
And you kind of just have to listen to those. And it's the importance of like tuning back into yourself and knowing what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and
hmm.
making those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Okay, so thank you for being on. I do want to make sure I ask you some closing questions that I ask all of my guests before we close the show. We had talked about connections and how you want to build community while you're in Buenos Aires. Throughout your travels, I know that you were also in remote year, so that was a big part of the connection piece. But were there any other methods that you were able to meet meaningful connections while you were traveling? And what would you recommend to others who are looking for the same?
Yes, and I'm gonna give them a shout out. Nomad's Giving Back and Nomad Skillshare.
Oh, yes.
They're both ran by Tarek, who is a dear friend. And he's the reason why I'm even talking to you right now, because he connected me
Ah,
with the person who connected me with you. So
yes.
it's beautiful. It's a community that keeps on giving, and they do a lot of great things. So anyone who's interested in the nomad world, please check them out, support them. They have a lot of great resources and just really amazing people doing great things around the world as nomads.
Yeah, and I honestly, it's so funny how many times I've been connected to Nomads Giving Back. It's through Kristen, who
Mm,
is our
yeah,
mutual, but then I also connected
yeah.
with Flaminia, the founder of Nomad Haven. She,
Wow.
and then
Kristen just
also,
told me about her this morning.
okay, yeah. So I interviewed her because of Kristen as well. And then I was
Oh,
on a different podcast and he was like, you have to talk to. And I was like, oh my God, wow, like I really should. I should. I should actually. And sometimes the
yeah,
universe just like nudges me along. So at some point,
yeah.
maybe we'll do an interview for Nomads Giving Back. But that is a great way.
Yeah, that's been a great way for me to connect with people who are just conscious, grounded, giving, good souls.
You did a lot of journaling, so you will probably have a plethora of these to answer. But what is one question you wish you could have asked your younger self sooner as you were starting this process that would have maybe illuminated things faster for you?
It's a great question. And I wish I would have put more energy towards discovering the things that truly light up my soul, that
Mm,
genuinely make me happy, give me energy, and don't add in the how will I make money from this or what will people think about
mm,
this. Just really connect with the part of me that feels joy, happy, peace. Because had I done that, I feel like things could have sped up and I could have
yeah.
made it easier on myself, but I got there eventually. And answering what that is, for me, it's music. Music is my biggest
mm.
joy, my number one love. And so much has come to my life after I acknowledged that. But
Oh.
I wish at a younger age, I could have spent more time listening to music, playing around in music, being curious about music, sharing music, and not think once again, how will I make money from this or what will people think about me or whatever.
Oh, I love that you brought that up because that didn't come up with the childhood question. So it wasn't part of your life early on, but
No,
it's
so
something that feels like
it
play.
wasn't something that at a young age I really paid a lot of attention to. But as I got older, and then now it's my biggest love, my number one
Ah,
love.
I love it. And
Yeah.
what in music do you do?
So I'm an OBM in a embodied leadership DJ academy called PHDJ, Powerhouse DJ
Oh.
School. I will give them a huge shout out. They're one of the best things that has come into my life. My biggest joy ever to work with them and co-create with Tasha Blank, who's incredible, and the team that we've now created. And we just started our third cohort last month, and I'm heading to see them all soon, which is gonna be epic.
Ah.
They don't know I'm coming, so I'm
Oh,
surprising
surprise.
the entire team. I'm flying from Argentina to see them, and I'm saying that now because I'm not gonna hear this until this comes out in March. But I'm seeing them soon, which is gonna be epic. But I
Oh,
do what I
wow.
do as an OBM in a field that I absolutely love. And I've been able to really find a way to use my skills and my passions and make money in a field
Wow.
that's creative and oh my gosh, embodied and conscious and witchy in music, which
Ah.
100% created this job for myself, and it's a dream job for sure.
Yeah, especially since it's one of the things that really got you from the rock bottom and opened you back and got you into the flow state.
Yeah, going back, it was that song, which let's bring this all back and make this a crazy story. That song with the spoken word, that one song with the
Mhm.
spoken word, Tasha, who runs PhDJ, knows her.
Wow. Small world.
Crazy.
You should definitely get the introduction because I feel like that would be so crazy to like actually meet the person who behind the
Who
voice.
change.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And crazy enough, I thought about her, I think yesterday or today, that I thought about her. I think her name is Emma Broward. And the fact that Tasha knew her, and then now I work with Tasha, I'm now connected with, her, which is
Yeah.
insane.
You
So,
gotta follow
okay.
the space.
Yeah. Thank you for the
This is your third
encouragement.
time. Yeah, exactly. If
It will be
anything, just
good.
to hear her voice like in real life, I think would be really unlocking.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. I love that. That just gave me chills.
So it sounds like, in terms of play, you've leaned into the creative side, combining your skills as well that you learned from more corporate into a beautiful career that you love and feels like play to you, which is actually really beautiful, and I love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is play.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a musician, I don't DJ, I'm not in that part of music, I wanted to be around music and to do something in music. And I've been able to do that with PhDJ, and I hope to continuously do more work like that.
Ugh, that's so beautiful. I love it. And it's so cool that you created this job, this perfect job for yourself.
Yeah, I 100% manifested and I called it into my life. I went for it. I literally told her, and at that time her co-founder, that I wanted to do all these things with them and I believed in their vision, and I got myself a dream job, and I was the first hire, and now we have a team of 10 and we're just getting
Wow.
bigger and better, and it's just so abundant, and I'm so grateful for it, and it came down to me going after it though. I had to
Doing the action.
claim it. I had to ask for it. I had to believe in myself. So if I want to leave the audience with anything, is that you
Yes.
have the agency to do that. You have the power to take control of your life, and you can claim what you want. And until you do that, you're not going to have it unless you're really lucky, or I don't know, angels are, gifting you with gifts. But the real power comes when you own it. When you own your power, that's when your life can really change.
That's beautiful. Yes, I love that as a closing line. I usually ask for like one last advice, and I would not have been able to say it any better than that. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Yes. Oh my God. And I love getting to know you. That's one of my favorite things about doing these podcast interviews as well, is I get to meet new friends doing it. So it's been beautiful. And thank you, Shippy,
Love
for sharing
this.
your story with me and allowing me to connect with it as well.
Absolutely.
What's a way that everyone can reach out to you if they have any questions or interested in the work that you do or want to hire you, or what is it
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
you can share?
absolutely. Yeah, so I have a website, a newly published website, www.yurichusu.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm not much on there, but you can still see my stories and things that I've posted in the past. It was just Yuri Chu Su, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, the same name. So my name is quite unique, so it's pretty easy to find me.
Perfect. And you particularly focus in the music space or general entrepreneurship space, or what type of clients do you typically work with?
General entrepreneurs, I do want to step more into music, but I'm very versatile, and I have quite a range of clients who are coaches, who do retreats, who host events. I have like male clients who have male focus groups. I also have a
Oh, wow.
conscious kink client, so I have quite the range.
Oh.
But it comes down to me being able to really up level the operations of any business that comes my way.
Amazing. And I know that that's such a needed thing, especially with a lot of online business owners, myself included, where there's just so much that you have to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, to have someone with that more operations mindset to get everything done. Because sometimes you have the idea, but the execution, that is,
Yeah.
that's where the magic
That's
happens.
Yeah, and that's where I really shine, is how do I make your vision come to life in the easiest, most efficient, most automated way possible. And I'm just such a nerd at heart. I love spreadsheets. I optimize everything in my life, and that's what I do for my clients. And in my process of creating my website, I asked for testimonials, and everyone just had such incredible things to say about me and my abilities, and that really gave me a lot of confidence. So that's what I'm sharing in this podcast, that I am really able to optimize the operations of any business out there.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's so important. I will link all of the information. So anyone who is an online business owner, entrepreneur, and could use an online business manager to really help you just get ish done, I think you're going to come in and just do such wonders in that space. So reach out and follow her on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'll link all of those things. Yuri, thank you so much for being on today. This was so lovely, and I'm sure many more in the future to come in terms of seeing you in person or probably around the world. So I can't
Yeah.
wait. And maybe I'll see you in Buenos Aires.
Oh, I would love that. Maybe in a relay race. But thank you. This has been
Yes.
amazing. I love the conversation and the opportunity to share my story. So I appreciate you a lot. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. I hope your story of transformation inspired you. And I will see you all in the next adventure. As we wrap up another beautiful and insightful episode, I want to leave you with an opportunity to deepen your journey of connection. So head over to travelnotsescape.com/friends to explore the Passport to Connection program. This is a unique one-day live virtual workshop and monthly mastermind that's designed to empower you on your journey of connection. And this goes from connecting back into yourself, reigniting your spirit of play, understanding what you value for yourself and in friendships, where to find these people, especially while you're traveling. And then once you actually meet them, how to turn those connections into friendships, handle rejection, handle filtering for like-minded individuals. And then once you're friends, how to actually maintain these connections, especially when time and distance are a factor. So this is a one-day live virtual workshop because I wanted to make sure you got all of this knowledge right away so that you can start connecting with people. So if you're going on a trip or if you're moving soon, I wanted you to have all this information, all of these actionable insights right at your fingertips. And you will immediately be joined by a small group of like-minded individuals that are going on the same journey. So you are also building community right along with getting all the information that you need. So go ahead and head to travelnotsescape.com/friends. I have more information on there. I am creating a very intimate group for this workshop, so make sure to sign up soon so you can secure your spot. And I am so excited to welcome you on to the program. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing, and safe travels, navigators.